All right. Hello, friends, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Our Life, Beginnings and Always, Baxter's Route. In the last episode, we started step 4, where we met Jude and Scott, who are getting married soon. We found out that Baxter has grown into his final form as a wedding planner, and we have been tasked to getting the wedding cake on a secret mission with Baxter, one-on-one mission together. I like that I'm making it into some sort of like secret agent spy sort of thing, and I'm really excited to get some one-on-one time with Baxter. I am interested in seeing how he is going to play this. Is he going to ignore me? Are we going to talk about how we knew each other and dated 5 years ago? I don't know. Let's see how this goes. You had to exit the building in one group and then split off in the parking lot. The main team of Scott, Jude, Miranda, and Terry was going to spend the entire afternoon on guest favors, while your branch had the task of arranging a cake. Baxter directed the way to go and separated from the crowd first. You had to give fast farewells before catching up with your partner for the operation. Even the game is giving secret agent. I love this. Baxter led you to the back of the lot and approached what you assumed was his car. Somehow, as you got closer to it, you could have guessed it was Baxter's. Which color is it, black or white? It was sparkling white, not a single scratch, scuff, or speck of dirt. Once the door was opened, the interior, however, was floor-to-ceiling black, of course. Black and white. Another coincidence, perhaps? Or were there too many of those at this point for it to be happenstance? Baxter eased the seatbelt across his chest and addressed his passenger. You. It was strange. He'd been so committed to maintaining a defined distance. When it was no longer an option, he didn't touch on the change. Instead, he behaved as if he was always an employee in your service. Great.
So,
welcome to my vehicle. Please change the temperature and air direction to your liking. The radio works. I'll leave it off, but of course you can put on some music if you want. Baxter's face was kept straight ahead, eyes towards the road, and he hadn't even started driving yet. How professional. You could watch him as much as you wanted. Right up close, you did. The beauty mark on his neck was close enough to touch. That's kind of weird. That was him, Baxter Ward. It was you and Baxter sitting alone in a car after 5 years and a promise that you'd never see each other ever again. And he wasn't going to acknowledge even a hint of that on his own. You were certain of it. Am I allowed to speak to the driver, or is that off limits? That's fun, I like that. It depends on what you would like to discuss.
I apologize.
I can endeavor to help with any part of the planning, but unfortunately my base of knowledge is limited to specific areas. Well, that was a pleasant way to outright reject talking about anything actually important. How long have you been a wedding planner? His grip loosened on the wheel. The softball question was the right call. About 2 years. There's still much to learn. You attempted to add follow-ups or kickstart other conversations. He bunted each one, answering as succinctly as possible. It couldn't be described as a cheerful drive, but the time passed in an acceptably uneventful fashion. And soon Baxter was pulling into a parking lot somewhere in the heart of Prism Vista City. You'd arrived. A pastel pink sign plastered across the top of one of the buildings read Zake Bakery in big bold letters. A smaller cursive underneath said Cake Designs by Xavier. Baxter approached without wasting a second. A tinkling bell jingled as Baxter opened the door. He held it out for you. Being in a rush didn't mean being impolite, apparently. You joined him. The design of the sign accurately alluded to what was to come. The whole bakery was decked out in soft pinks and creams. Each dessert in the neat little rows was delightfully delicate. If the taste matched the presentation, they must be incredible. Warm air perfumed with spices like cinnamon and nutmeg surrounded you completely. Whatever teenage Baxter's sharp monochrome style was supposed to be, this store was the opposite of that. The sound of the bell summoned someone from the back. Clad in a simple apron with far from basic face makeup on and a stylish updo, the employee smiled brightly. At the risk of being presumptuous, you'd guess that this was Xavier. Their whole look was made to fit with the overall aesthetic. Even the flowers in their flowing hair looked as if they were plucked right out of a wedding cake.
Always a pleasure.
Okay, not how I expected you to sound, but okay, I have seen their sprite before, their design perhaps, so that is not a surprise to me, but Baxter, welcome. Always a pleasure. Is this a new client? Not quite, but I do have a job for you. This is Kit, a friend of my latest couple. They are here to assist with the preparation of the event.
Well,
The lovebirds are busy with tasks of equal importance, you see. It was almost astounding how much more naturally he spoke when it was to anyone other than you. Though this being about his work also might have helped, Baxter was back in his element. Kit, this is Xavier. They are the head baker and cake artist on this fine establishment. Thanks for coming in. It's good to meet you. Xavier's eyes sparkled. At first glance, the color seemed a pale brown, but the more you looked, the more you caught shades of purple. Hey there. So, what exactly can I do for you? Or your clients, rather? To be honest, it's a pinch unusual to not have even one person getting married come to commission their wedding cake. Well, these are unusual circumstances. Baxter confessed that much with his eyes closed. When he had enough shamelessness to look Xavier directly in the face, the inherent charm of Baxter's grin had been pushed to its absolute limit.
Is that fine?
Could you possibly make a 3-tier cake that is simple yet still elegant and modern in about 3 days? Xavier's perfectly painted lips popped open. Not a word came out of them, but it wasn't as if they were given a chance to object. There was more. And that schedule is including today. The wedding is Saturday afternoon. Baxter rolled his wrist, smoothly recounting each of the points set during the initial planning meeting. If he stated it as a predetermined fact, surely that meant it had become real. For flavors, they would like chocolate and vanilla, separate for 2 of the tiers and in combination for 1. They finally cut him off there, folding their arms definitely. Definitely? Definitely.
Flavors are not the concern right now, monsieur.
Full line, alright.
Really?
I would say that's fairly important. Not if I can't do the order. Oh, Xavier, no need to worry. I trust in your abilities immensely. There was a scoff. Baxter kindly ignored it. Besides, there are worse arrangements. Are there? And an example of that would be, well, entirely theoretically, you could have to prepare desserts for a full-scale party the very night before the event. You blinked. Did Baxter just reference when you worked together to throw a party for Miranda? Those shared memories had played about your own mind lately, especially since you were handling event desserts together again, but he'd made his interest in reminiscing known. There was none. And yet, there he went, chuckling heedlessly and running a hand through his hair.
Understandable.
I am sympathetic to this being a difficult task. As Kit, as my witness, I did swear to never take for granted the effort it takes to provide decorated and delicious treats under pressure. We were only able to start baking 3 dozen cupcakes at a time when many people would be going to bed. Baxter glanced at your face, his eyes sparkling with affection. You weren't mistaken. He was talking about the time when you were dating, and now he'd acknowledged you directly in his storytelling. You did what? With who? I thought they were here because of your clients. Xavier's disbelief over his words rivaled your own, except for entirely different reasons. They batted their hand encouragingly for more details. No, you dug this hole. Baxter schooled his coyness into a more level-headed smile at being questioned, and you suddenly understood. He knew Xavier. He knew you. The clients he didn't know weren't there. For a moment, Baxter had forgotten his professional self. Ooh, unprofessional bitch. I'm telling the clients. It wasn't Baxter's normal state to wall you out so completely. That was a concerted effort, one that went against his real preference. His first instinct was to still be amicable towards you. What a relief! You barely held back a massive phew. Baxter had been so odd ever since you ran into each other again. You couldn't figure out why. It was because he'd always been on the job. You couldn't begrudge him for that, and hopefully you'd get a chance to connect in your free time later. I guess I'm silently relieved. We were up in the dead of night frosting those cupcakes. I've known Baxter since his black and white phase. We're just gonna keep bringing it up. I guess we were up in the dead of night frosting those cupcakes. Xavier's eyes widened, and so did their smile. Can you elaborate on this story? But that tangent was stopped short with a demure ahem. Sure enough, there it was. Let's not get too distracted. While 3 days is more than a single night, it is a tight deadline regardless. It would be rude to take up any more of your time than necessary. Baxter spoke while continuously ignoring the fact that Xavier did not accept the commission being foisted on them. Truly, nothing rude was allowed. As the only person in the room who might be able to understand the nonsense of what they were going through, Xavier frowned at you. You had no explanation to give for Baxter. Sighing, Xavier pressed their palms into their lower back. Already feeling phantom strain from this job. I'm so sorry. I'll do it for you. That sounded about right. If a random pair of people had rolled in and began making similarly absurd demands, you couldn't imagine Xavier would have humored that. Still, a victory was a victory. Mr. Planner managed to pull it off, somehow.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. You are a lifesaver. Baxter retrieved his notebook from his jacket, not hesitating a second. Xavier matched the move. They had a notepad with order sheets. The wedding industry collaborators began the process of putting in a cake order. All the prior decisions were recounted, and Baxter described the pair in question as best as possible. You had a few points of your own to contribute from being more familiar with Jude and Scott. It was made extra clear that Scott did not want a cake design laced and frilled out like 18th century underwear. Xavier had a handful of follow-up questions, but it was nothing that required calling the couple. And then the baker slipped the order form into the pocket of their apron. Amazingly, your work there was done. Having a professional do the desserts really was a breeze.
Good deal.
Thanks for stopping in at Zake. I better get started. They offered a grin as sweet as any slice of cake. Let's see each other again soon, okay? Not as customers, though that would be nice too, but also to hang out after this shared nightmare is all over. Baxter immediately came in with another throat clear, much harder than before. First off, you shouldn't call the Adams wedding a nightmare, even if the circumstances aren't ideal. They have done what they could. And second, you were right the first time. Kit is a friend of the couple I am working with. We don't hang out together. Damn, Baxter. Who cares about you? Xavier and I are gonna hang out together. Nobody asked you. Xavier's face went blank, then they paired it with an ever so slight tilt of the head. I'm not sure why you're saying that, but we've all got work to do. You two can explain it next time. I can wait. You wondered if Baxter remembered about 5 minutes ago when each one of Xavier's objections went through one of his ears and out the other, and if his own medicine tasted bad. He bristled. That simply wouldn't do. With firm insistence and exaggerated enunciation, Baxter repeated his standpoint. Regrettably, there won't be a next time the three of us come together like this. Once the wedding has concluded, Kit will have no reason to interact further. Okay, you were confused again. Baxter didn't want to get along outside of work? Then why was he so friendly? You could get it if he was uninterested in you as a person at that point. 5 years was a long time. And it makes sense if he didn't want to mess around while focused on planning, but was comfortable beyond that. But to go back and forth on whether your relationship was close or if your past still held weight like that made no sense. You must have missed something. There are so many good options here. I like you said that we wouldn't see each other anymore last time, and yet here I am again. But I also like, no, Xavier has a point. We should do that. I kind of like that one a little bit better.
Woohoo!
Great, call me when you're free. Kit is leaving shortly after the wedding. If I can fit this cake into my schedule, I'm sure Kit can find time to visit, especially if they want to. The same goes for you, Baxter. Baxter shot daggers at Xavier without ever dropping his sparkling customer service smile. That only made it more intimidating.
No.
I will visit you again, surely, but you'll have to content yourself with only my company.
Now?
Thank you very much for accepting this rush order, Xavier. You are such a help, but we need to get going. I can't believe Xavier and I are going to team up together to bully Baxter. Not the way that I thought this was gonna go. In the most roundabout way possible, he was kindly requesting Xavier get off his back already. Then he turned that back directly to them and strode out the door without another word. Xavier watched his dramatic exit with her hands stuffed into the big apron pocket. An unexpected seriousness colored their normally bright features. For as playful as Xavier was, they were concerned about their acquaintance, work friend, normal friend. You didn't know where they stood with him. Xavier himself likely didn't have a clear answer. Baxter was opaque that way.
Phew!
Good luck with all this. Thanks, I'll need it. You gave your goodbyes, certain this wouldn't be the last time you spoke, and headed after Baxter. Baxter was waiting for you by the car. He climbed inside as you approached before you were close enough to try speaking. You joined him inside. You can't get away from me. We're in the same car. It was tense. Against all odds, being alone in a small space with Baxter had managed to become an even more awkward situation. Seated and buckled, you waited for what he'd do. Baxter asked a simple question. Could you enter in the address of where you're staying? I can drive you there. That was straightforward enough. You punched it in. Thank you. It went quiet again until he was on the road, past the bakery, and out of the most traffic-heavy part of the city.
Well.
Jude and Scott should be pleased to hear they will have a lovely wedding cake. You assumed it would go that way. Of course, Baxter would dance right around what happened without acknowledgement. I don't know how to play it. I don't know how to play this. Yeah, they're gonna be happy. I don't know. What's the other one? Just in case. I want to talk to you. Nah, they're gonna be happy. And that was it. Did you want to talk about it? Hold on. Yeah, because I just went through this conversation a little bit, just kind of glancing, skimming through it, and this is the funniest conversation I'm going to ever read in my life. What the fuck, my dude? I want to talk to you. Baxter flexed his knuckles and the perfect smile on his face twitched. You headed off his rejection before he could give it. I know you're here right now because of a client, but you can't be working all the time. You have to be done for the day. I have other work. Baxter was quick with that retort, prepared from the last time you headed him off. Then you should take a break. I'm not going to let this go. He sighed in a dramatic fashion that was entirely opposed to the forced cordiality from the seconds before. There's no other way. Let's use rock, paper, scissors to decide. What? Before you could doubt the logic of playing a hand signaling game while driving, or question the maturity levels of the highly professional planner next to you, he'd already made his move. It's going to be rock. I only choose rock. And you? Paper? Which is really funny because I usually only choose scissors. So, just fun that we both have one that we do, and we only do that one. At a complete loss, you held out your hand like you wanted him to shake. He didn't take your paper hand. He didn't make a fist rock either, but he did accept your answer. You win.
Is that fine?
Would you mind if I pulled over to have this break? No, that'd be perfect. Then we will talk. Baxter shut the GPS off. You no longer knew where you were headed anymore, but he took some exit and got a place to park. It was mutually decided not to talk inside the car. It was too suffocating. The both of you wordlessly opened the doors. Okay, we watched fireworks here once. Outside was the same waterfront path where you saw fireworks together. Maybe I should read before I talk. That was how he'd found a place to park right away. He already knew the area. You could picture it with clarity. Baxter was by your side, so much younger, so much closer to you. Under the night sky and flashes of lights, you'd been happy. You were certain he was happy then too. But that moment was over. The reality of the new present was stark under the unforgiving summer sun. Baxter was walking away from you, pointedly placing distance between you and him. He only faced you directly when he was out of arm's reach.
Ah.
Kit, what a stunning coincidence stumbling into you here, and right when I happen to be taking a bit of time off of work. God, you're so stupid. You'd finally got him talking, and it was pure sarcasm. How are you doing this fine afternoon, I'm totally fine. There's nothing wrong with me. I want to know what's going on with you. I thought you left because the summer was over and it would have been hard to keep in touch while you were in college or something. That was all. I didn't feel like we ended things on a bad note. Things were okay between us, right? Why are you so uncomfortable being around me? I just can't understand what I did or am doing.
I'm sorry.
He broke eye contact. It was his only escape since you hadn't let him run away for real again. I'm not any less immature than I was 5 years ago, it seems. I've been incredibly rude to you, and that is inexcusable. You're not unwelcome near me. Of course not. However, I am here to plan Jude and Scott's wedding. My priority is that only, and I don't want to get caught up in anything else. There's no need to reminisce. I hope that's not insulting. It's honestly not meant to be a strike against your character.
You need to understand.
You are a lovely person and have many wonderful friends. You don't need me to be an active part of your life. We do, because this playthrough is entirely about you, so shut up and accept it. It's best if you ignore me entirely or view me as any other stranger. But I want to be friends. I'm sorry, Kit. I don't have anything more to offer. Smiling at you in a wholly impersonal way, Baxter wrapped up this exercise in futility. I imagine that is as useful as this break will be. Please allow me to take you home. Okay, great. So you returned to the car and the drive resumed. Baxter said nothing else, not that you expected him to. You'd pushed past mere pleasantries with him and seen the results. It was too late to go back now. That left you time with your thoughts. You'd gotten a better grasp on Baxter's intentions, what was motivating him to act the way he had. But in terms of clearing the air, the clouds had only become murkier. Things were in motion, but it was as if you weren't going anywhere. Eventually, the destination did arrive, and you were turning into the suburbs. Baxter lined up with the side of the road, rather than pulling into their driveway. He idled with his eyes dead ahead.
Thank you.
For the assistance today. Have a nice rest of your afternoon. There was an audible click as Baxter unlocked the doors. Take care. He got out and walked up to the front before ringing the bell. The day's plans should have the whole rest of the group home and working on guest favors. Baxter's car lingered on the curb in your peripherals. Maybe he wanted to make sure you actually did get inside, or maybe not. You could never guess with him. You started from the door being opened.
Hey!
You made it back in one piece. You were already smiling from being back. Hi, Scott. While following your host inside, you stole a last glance behind you. The road was clear. Wedding headquarters was at full capacity in the living room. The supply count had doubled, no, tripled, since yesterday. And most of it was candy. Presumably, they'd gone down to the treat aisle in the local grocery store and gotten a bag of every single one. The only living human you could see sitting in the pile of goods was Jude. He lifted a hand in greeting.
Hey.
Hi, Kit.
Thanks.
You're just in time. We're making lunch. The voices of your friends carried over from the kitchen, as did the smell of hearty, fresh-cut vegetables. You better save some for me. We will.
So?
How did it go at the bakery? Xavier is going to make it, and we told them everything you said about it. The bakery was nice. It should be a good cake. Thank you. It's hard leaving it all in someone else's hands, but this is gonna work. Knock on wood. He tapped his knuckles against his own head, chuckling. I have never heard that before, but I like it. Thanks. You gonna help with this? Without stopping his busy work, Jude kicked at a nearby bag of chocolates. Oh, sure, I can.
Great.
Food first. Around the table, in between bites of homemade stew, Scott broke down what you'd missed. The actual favors were treat bags, but part of the job included creating a decorated place setter with the guest's name on it. That would indicate where everyone was meant to sit at the various tables. Technically, the attendee could take the fancy display with their name, but the couple was under no illusions that anyone would actually want to. It was purely for presentation. Basically, the steps consisted of writing the name down in your best handwriting, applying decals to the basic nameplate, and filling a bag of candy with what the person might like. When the meal was done, the full force of this party planning committee came together to tackle the trial of guest favors. No one would stop until it was done. A good chunk of the list had been checked off while you were away, and it was simple work, just time-consuming. Luckily, there were plenty of people to do it. Many hands make light work, as somebody once said. Wait, that was Baxter who said it. You were almost certain. That sounded like a phrase he'd use. While you were there, Jude mentioned twice how you could throw some of every type of candy into each bag and call it a day without the fuss. You had to imagine neither were the first instance of that object coming up. But each time Scott remained adamant that they should personalize the selection. If someone was coming to their wedding, they were important enough to have a treat to their tastes. Very deliberately, Cove's candy bag had been left empty until you'd gotten back. You were assigned to do that one yourself. It was as easy as taking candy from a baby in order to give those sweets to Cove instead, okay? In the evening, the wedding group chat popped up with a new text. Another entirely casual, exceedingly normal update from Baxter Ward. It noted that you'd meet tomorrow morning to discuss today's accomplishments and plan next steps. During the process, some sparks flew between allies. It couldn't be helped. Debates over which treats were best was inevitable, and those always became serious. Overall, though, you were a unified force. Then, as night fell, your team effort brought about the completion of the collection. On one side of the room was a stack of stylish table settings, each with a thoughtfully compiled bag of candy sitting on top. On the other end was enough garbage to fill a dump truck. That was going to be a hassle. But Terry and Miranda were allowed to tap out when the favors were done. It was already getting late. For dinner, takeout was ordered so nobody had to cook or clean another meal after hours of putting the little favors together. No complaints there. For a little while, the three of you could pretend the work was already over for real. No one mentioned the chaos that was waiting one room away. But when everyone was full, Jude wandered back into the living room turned workshop. He heaved a sigh and tossed a random piece of trash in a garbage can. It was a drop in the ocean. The entire living room was a mess of wrappers, paper scraps, and undefinable crafting residue. Scott hovered nearby, his features drawn apologetically. The light-hearted atmosphere you shared as a team earlier in the day had shattered. All that remained was the fractured debris, and it went beyond pre-wedding jitters. After months of planning, Jude had reached a point where he wanted the preparation to be over. He was worn down, and little victories weren't able to lift his mood. All he saw was what was still left. Meanwhile, Scott only seemed to become more invested, more concerned over how it came together as the deadline approached. You debated having some kind of intervention about their friction, but weren't sure you could pull it off in a way that would actually improve the situation. "We can clean this later. Let's play something." "Sure." Scott blurted out an agreement instantly. If Jude had asked him to do a backflip for his entertainment, Scott probably would have in that moment.
Alright.
"Want to join?" He tilted his head your way. You waved your hands back and forth. "Thanks, but I'm gonna go to my room." The two had spent the entire day with other people. You weren't going to get in the way of them having some quality couple time in the final hour. "Alright." Jude gave you a half shrug, half smile. He was on to what you were doing. "Have a good night, Kit." "Good night." Your hosts retired for the day, happier than they'd been since you first showed up. That was a relief. You made your own way to the guest room. The rest of the night would be yours. "Sure?" called Sis. After what happened that day, you could use a conversation with someone who'd be happy to hear from you. There was plenty to think about to pass the seconds as the dial tone played. She wouldn't be attending the wedding. Miranda was your friend, only an acquaintance of hers, and she'd never even met Jude or Scott in person. Liz had no idea what was going on over here and never would unless you said so. And so, you would. Your screen changed. She answered.
Hey.
What a sound for sore ears, even if she came right out of the gate with teasing you. "So you've actually decided to call instead of texting the whole time. How generous." Yes, you're welcome. Hi, Liz." She laughed, and you could easily imagine her tossing her head back. "Well, how is it going?" That pleasantry was a more complicated question than she knew. It was going, that was for sure, but you got straight to the core point. Jude and Scott, the couple I'm helping, hired a wedding planner. It's Baxter Ward. You inserted as much thrill and intrigue as possible in the rushed statement. Her answer was a single, flat word. "Who?" That Victorian emo boy, Pepe Le Pew, you know.
Seriously?
That loser? He's a wedding planner now? Yeah. She processed this over a silent minute and concluded it was acceptable. Well, I guess who else would want to spend their time absorbed in the fanciest of life events than a guy who acted like every day was a grand ball? Is he still ridiculous? No, he doesn't dress in black and white and just acted like a normal professional. I didn't expect that. I can't even imagine that. I now regret not getting an invitation to that wedding. I ought to be there for this. It would have been nice to have you around. Yes, it would. You two siblings spent more time chatting, but eventually had to wrap things up. You had an early morning on the horizon. After a playful "bye, kiddo," Liz ended the call. Everything was done, for the moment anyway. You finally had space to think about something other than wedding worries or Baxter bothers, at least for a little while. Some time for just yourself was well deserved, and you managed to enjoy your your relaxation before slipping off to bed. Then, all of a sudden, it was morning, and you were off to the proper second meeting with the planner. Everyone once again gathered in Baxter's office, waiting for him to arrive, and in turn, Jude and Scott were tense. The closer the wedding got, the further they were from gaining any semblance of peace. No matter how much they tried to unwind outside of the meetings, the moment they returned to the chic office, their discomfort skyrocketed. The way Scott's fingers were fidgeting in his lap, you would almost believe that he was anxiously twisting the tension in the air. Oh my god, me too. Every single time that I'm recording, I'm just down here, either playing with the hem of my shirt or twisting my fingers around. Miranda frowned, unable to disregard the worsening creases in her brother's brow.
So...
This rug reminds me of Baxter. From before, anyway. She didn't elaborate for those who were not there before, and the awkward silence sent Terry into a fit of laughter. He pointed at the striped rug.
Yeah!
That's so true. It's literally the first Baxter-like thing I've seen. What about his business cards? His car is black and white, to no one's surprise.
Ooh.
You get a point for that, Kit. Terry's at 0.
Ooh!
Hey, since when was this a competition? Since I awarded points. Terry nodded and his mouth pressed into a hard line. The three of you only lasted a few seconds before bursting into giggles at the silliness of the situation. Randy looked at her brother and Scott, noticing their lack of input on the subject. She knew they would need a little context to join in on the joke, but neither even acknowledged her presence. Uh-oh. The couple was too absorbed in their own worries for their stony expressions to crack from her icebreaker. She folded her hands neatly in her lap and made no further attempts to chat. You and Terry shared a knowing glance and decided to also stay quiet. Jude and Scott weren't in the mood. Shortly after, there was a knock on the door. You don't have to knock, this is your office. Just come in. Everyone snapped out of their thought bubbles and swiveled towards each other instead of moving to answer it. Hello? The door opened and Baxter cheerfully stepped inside his office. His notepad was already open to a fresh page.
Nice to see you.
Good morning and welcome back. Thank you for waiting. A round of greetings bubbled up from the planning party committee while Baxter moved through the room. He promptly sat on the rolling chair opposite the couch and clicked his pen out. Now that we're all here, we should begin. Let's go over where things stand and determine how to proceed next. Scott sat up straighter on the purple couch and stiffly nodded. Jude, in contrast, slouched further into the cushion. Alright?
Uh-huh.
So yesterday, an order was put in for your wedding cake. I can assure you it will be ready on the day of the ceremony.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Of course.
Baxter carefully placed his pen tip to the notepad. His expression grew more serious all of a sudden. Speaking of the cake, I must give a small disclaimer. There is a tradition called cake smashing. I'm not sure if either of you are familiar with that. It merely means one or both members of the wedding couple slather cake into the face of their partner. I strongly suggest that you decide beforehand who, if either, will participate and to what degree of messiness. I cannot tell you how easy it is to sour the entire day by accidentally crossing a simple boundary line. There's a sad history of partners who find ignoring the wishes of their husband, wife, or spouse to be funny and realize far too late that it's absolutely not. Alarmed, Jude and Scott stared at Baxter. You were certain that neither had even considered any of those possibilities. Do you wanna?
No.
I don't. Do you?
No.
Then can we not do it at all? Do we have that option? Certainly. We don't have to include any tradition besides your own. The couple simultaneously sighed in relief. They peeked at the other and shared an amused grin. The first time either of them had smiled all morning. Baxter stole a moment to jot down a note.
Glad to hear it.
I'm delighted we're all on the same page. Moving right along, you worked on guest favors and decorations, correct? Have you finished, or will you be continuing with that task? We're done.
But...
We're done with the guest favors, but Scott anxiously laced his fingers and pressed his palms together in his lap. His knuckles turned white. Whenever he had anything to say about wedding plans, it became a trial of trying to avoid a disagreement. It's fine to explain what's on your mind, that's why we're all here. There's no way to compromise or find a solution if you won't even have the discussion. That surprised you. Baxter's ability to confidently and kindly handle issues in this kind of setting was admirable, but also completely ironic. You knew what he was like on a personal level, and this was a big do as I say, not as I do kind of flag. Swallowing thickly, the defeat in Scott's expression didn't seem so dire anymore. He was more willing to take on the challenge with Baxter on his side. Well, I also wanted to have more decorations. Specifically, the main thing for a reception. We don't have that. Centerpieces? Yeah, that's what I meant. We need to buy all the parts, but if we kept the design simple, then I think we could be done before the wedding. After getting his thoughts out, Scott risked a glance at his fiancée. Jude closed his eyes tiredly and took a deep breath. Go to the store. It's gotta be done today.
That'd be cool.
And I can go without you if you don't want to.
It's fine.
I'll do it. Scott's joy vanished. Jude didn't hide an ounce of the irritation in his voice. He was forcing himself to go along with this rather than taking any true interest, and he was making that fact crystal clear. Come on, Jude. She poked the side of his arm with a forceful jab, and Jude shooed her off. His frown worsened into a scowl. I already said I'd do it.
I understand.
I believe you're right, Scott. There will be room to pick out some materials that can be arranged into a lovely centerpiece. The process can be quite low effort and will look wonderful, so I'm taking it that shopping for decorations will be the big task of the day. Scott watched Jude a few seconds longer before answering. He nodded, slowly. Before the window of opportunity closes, is there anything that you would like to include, Jude? Anything that you'd enjoy? It doesn't have to be a typical wedding feature. There are no limits on what your own ceremony or reception can have.
No.
He folded his arms across his chest, and he wondered how deep Jude was about to dig in his heels. I don't want anything else. We're almost finished. Why add more on top of it? Randy sighed. Terry silently bit his lip. That was a track you'd gone down before, repeatedly. It was always the same point of contention with Jude. But today, Scott was emboldened. Enough that he muttered his long-held back grievance, anyway.
Why are you being like this?
If you don't have anything to contribute, can you at least stop trying to take away what I think of? Jude's eyes snapped wide open. He swiftly pulled in his shock and replaced it with a distinctly unimpressed stare. I didn't take anything away from you, and I did contribute, in the planning stage. We're past that. It's done. But since there's time, we could—
Come on.
We've been putting this thing together for weeks, hell, months in some ways. I've been to more parties than you, and I've planned more. You need to relax. Jude went to brush back some of his curls, but his fingers tightened and dug into his scalp instead. Bewildered, his gaze flickered around the room. Scott doesn't even like parties. I don't get his issue. We have a planner now. He can figure this shit out. Why even have him if we're still going to be spending every hour before the wedding working on crap? Jude's flash of anger dimmed as quickly as it has flared. He redirected his attention to Baxter, apologetically. No offense, dude. It's not your fault. None taken on my account. The pinch in Baxter's features made you think he was fairly miffed on behalf of someone else. Continuing the trend of speaking directly to the audience, Scott offered his side of the defense.
It's true.
I've never planned a party, and yeah, I haven't been invited to many either, but we're the people making this one. I don't want it to be an awkward embarrassment. All of our friends and family are coming. I can't stand the idea that they'll leave wondering why the hell they even came in the first place. Scott began his explanation sad, but the longer he spoke, the more his own frustration grew. And having a planner doesn't mean we can drop everything onto someone else. The entire point was so more. to get done. At least that's why I wanted an expert to help. I'm not interested in half-assing it, and if Jude doesn't want to do anything else, he doesn't have to. But all I've said against him the entire time is he should stop making me feel guilty for not giving up. Jude chucked his own self-imposed pretense and shot back directly at Scott. You shouldn't have to do anything either. That's my whole point. But if you keep taking on stupid crafting projects, then I have to handle some of it for you. But it's not needed. Nobody cares that much. I care, even if I'm the only one. Come on, that's not what I meant.
Right.
It really sounds like you're invested. And that was the end of their discussion. This meeting had not gone to plan, and the discomfort was reaching suffocating levels. Baxter leaned against his chair, crossing his legs. Let's take a pause to breathe and assess what's happening here. There's nothing wrong with caring about your wedding.
But
It is a truly draining experience to create a massive and important event from the ground up. That's why we have planners. So there should be an understanding for that as well. Now, as the expert here, I must ask an important question. Both Jude and Scott nodded. Their gazes became glued to Baxter, anything other than each other. Slowly, Baxter untwisted himself and leaned forward, almost lifting out of his seat. What are your opinions on bowling? What the hell? Bowling is a casual sport, popular with almost all ages.
Hold on.
Dude, he knows what bowling is. He's asking why that was your important question. You can't be telling me people have bowling at their weddings. Baxter considered that remark with a smirk. He tapped the side of his cheek twice. No one has ever done that at any of the weddings I've helped plan, but I wouldn't be surprised if some couple out in the world set up a game or two of lawn bowling for their guests.
maybe.
Or perhaps even held a reception at a bowling alley. Interesting, though that's not what I had in mind. I wish to invite the 5 of you to bowl with me today. Right now, preferably. My treat. Perplexed, Scott pushed his glasses up. He was at a loss for words. I'd do it. What? I said I'd do it. You would? Jude's answer confused Scott further. He gauged the room and Terry offered him a thumbs up.
Fun!
I love bowling. Sounds fun.
Agreed.
Terry put forward a high five that you gladly accepted with a loud slap. Just about everyone was thrilled by the prospect of getting out of this office and stretching their legs. But Scott retained the final say. He tightened his already taut ponytail. Alright, we can go do that.
Excellent.
I know the perfect place. What the fuck, dude? And that was how you ended up at the exact same bowling alley Baxter had brought you 2 years before. You followed your friends inside, holding that revelation close to your chest. It was fairly surreal to be there again, and with Baxter, too. Everything appeared just as you remembered it, even down to the shiny red seats. The almost otherworldly atmosphere that seemed to encompass every bowling alley remained intact. It was remarkable how the lights and sounds were so different from normal day-to-day life. Before anyone could further question Baxter's planning methods and what they were even doing there, you were at the front of the line. The group secured an alley, changed shoes, and were all set to start. Okay. Hey, how about we play on teams? Mine versus yours, Jude, like always?
Sure.
Okay. The ends of Jude's lips curled slyly, and he pointed at his sister. Randy, you're with me. Miranda bobbed her head and then gave the potential competition a once-over. When her gaze fell on Terry, he shot his hand up.
Yeah.
I want to be on Randy's team. Jude laughed, rubbing the back of his neck, or the side, whichever one. He let Terry sweat by pretending to contemplate his request. Pretty please? Not much of an argument, but sure, he makes the team. Yes. Sorry, Scott, Kit, Baxter, but she's my girlfriend. We're kind of a package deal. Scott and Jude are about to be married and they're willing to go at each other in a heated battle, but whatever you say, that's them. I'm different. You're a couple. Yeah, we are. We have been this whole time. Don't tell me you didn't know. Terry gave Baxter a smug jab with his elbow. Well, I didn't want to presume anything. Still, hallelujah, I'd hoped it worked out for you. He pressed his palm against his heart and let out a sincere sigh of relief. Terry wasn't so self-impressed anymore.
Welcome.
What does that mean?
Oh?
Was the romantic tension you had towards Miranda meant to be a secret? It felt fairly obvious from the few occasions we interacted. That's preposterous. I never said a word back then. Come on, Terry. Yeah, come on, Terry. You downright were not subtle about it. You too? I am so sorry to burst your proverbial bubble, though I'm glad I wasn't the only one who noticed. Terry buried his face in his hands and groaned. He plainly wanted out of that conversation immediately. Miranda bumped him with her hip and giggled. We've been each other's favorites for a long time. The sweet moment pulled Terry out of his embarrassment and wiped away the worries from his expression. Baxter cleared his throat.
I apologize.
For the distraction. A distraction from the secondary distraction he already orchestrated. What a feat.
Yeah.
It's cool. Like you said, it all worked out. That's what counts with me. Energized, Terry punched a fist into his opposite palm. He nodded towards the alley. And right now, I'm ready to roll. We've got our teams. We can start. If you don't mind, Kit. Our team is perfect.
Yes!
Yeah, go team. Miranda eagerly smiled at your remark, and Terry alternatively smirked. We'll let the scores speak for themselves. How are we deciding who's going first? Rock, paper, scissors? Oh boy. A classic. One I rarely win, though I only choose rock. Why do you tell everybody? What a statement. He was a man with convictions. Rock-based convictions, apparently.
Okay.
Very well.
Regardless, since Jude got to pick who was on his team, I believe it would be fair for Scott's team to take their turn first. Jude shrugged smugly at the suggestion. He gestured towards the colorful bowling balls. Go ahead. It's not going to make a difference.
He's right.
Damn. Really? Scott calmly readjusted his glasses and then smirked. He pointed at his husband-to-be. Jude's gonna lose no matter when he steps up to the alley. Jude snorted. His competitive nature burned brightly in his unshakable expression. Bring it on, Grant. You're about to get your government funding revoked. Scott's mouth wobbled slightly at the sound of his own nickname, but he was determined to keep his game face on. Squaring his shoulders, he went straight to the rack and selected his ball. Scott went for the medium option. He picked it up and sent it down the alley with a large curve. Unfortunately, the ball barely managed to bring down 2 pins. Oh boy. His confidence hadn't faltered, though you caught him mumbling under his breath. No, just try again. The bowling ball rolled on back and Scott brought it to the starting line. And on this round, he managed to put a special oomph into his swing. The pins scattered in all directions. It would have been an easy strike if that had been his first throw, but it wasn't. Your team opened with a spare.
Okay.
You can go next, Kit. Roger that. Standing up, you confidently strode to the selection of bowling balls, weighing your options. Again, I don't know heaviest, medium, lightest, these terms and what it means for the game. I don't know. It felt a little uneven initially, but you were expecting that. Oh, your choice had changed with time. So it remembers, was I light the first time? Good old reliable. The feel was what you were used to. Why mess with that fit? Okay. Moving with precision, you took position. With a single swing, you let go and... Your abilities were holding up. The ball flew down the alley and knocked out a few pins. What a relief.
Amazing.
Good job. That was a great start. Thanks. Your second chance secured a spare. With your and Scott points even, the scoreboard was filling out well. Last up for your crew was the wild card. The person any of you least expected to be here, yet he was the only reason you were there to begin with. Your paths crossed while you were returning to the sitting area, and Baxter was going to select his ball. He briefly tilted his head in your direction. I think this team is perfect as well. The sound of his voice stopped you dead in your tracks. You looked over your shoulder, but he had continued on his path. Shaking your head, you secured your seat and watched what he did next. Baxter brushed his fingers along the rack of shiny weighted spheres. His hand stopped on a white ball, the heaviest size. He selected it, not without a subtle smirk. He strode up to the alley just fine with that. Biting your bottom lip, you tried to swallow a laugh. You knew under the surface Baxter was ecstatic with this showing, especially after his inability to use that in the past. Baxter didn't waste time messing around. He hefted the ball in an arc and sent it right off. He managed to topple 7 pins with the first throw and scored a spare on his second round. I'm proud of you.
Not bad.
He pivoted to the group and dipped his head good-naturedly after his performance. Jude stood up and clapped politely. The only way you can be better than us, team, is if you all get strikes, so good fucking luck. Alright, it's our turn now. The opposing team started off with their leader, Jude, who matched his fiancée and got a spare, alright? I mean, we could also just be the same. In his case, he managed almost every pin on the first try, yikes, and sealed the deal on the second. Terry bounced over and scored a spectacular strike like it was nothing. Good. He wrecked the curve and set himself up as the one to beat. Finally, it was Randy's round. She grabbed one of the heavier balls and boldly skipped to the alley and threw it backwards. What she did couldn't be classified as a throw, but a gentle nudge. Okay. The ball scooted right into the gutter. There wasn't even enough momentum to reach the pins. Alright, go Randy! Everyone in your group gawked at her in disbelief. Jude's jaw in particular hit the floor. Randy, what was that? Whoops, I don't know. She spun on her heel and twirled a curl with faux innocence. Jude ran a hand down his tense face. He knew what kind of mischief his sister was cooking.
Really?
You're throwing the game for me? My own sister? No, that was an accident. Miranda couldn't stop a single giggle and fluttered to her seat. She sweetly folded her hands in her lap. Damn. Jude sighed and bared down on her with all his big brotherly disappointments. His demeanor was sour enough to spoil Miranda's sugar-coated smile. Like a traitor's reveal, her true twisted intentions were revealed. I'm with Grant on this one. I love you, Randy.
Thanks.
I love you too, Kit. She held her hands up in the shape of a heart and beamed. Don't count your chickens before they hatch. I'm not out yet, and neither is Jude. Go ahead and try.
So?
I will carry this team if I have to. Chuckling, Scott got to his feet and pushed his sleeves up to his elbows. It was his turn. Good luck. You're gonna need it. So am I. Round after round, Miranda found even worse ways to send her bowling ball across the aisle. It was impressive, and your whole team reaped the benefits. Jude gave it his all, and Terry did what he could to buoy up the points with strikes, but their efforts weren't enough. And at the end of the game, you, Scott, Baxter, and Miranda were the winners. Even though it was a biased 4 versus 2, Scott was more than thrilled to claim this win. A victory was a victory, and he didn't care to lose. Double high five. Scott beamed, matching your enthusiasm for success. He left your skin stinging from the double slap, but you didn't mind. I told you, you were gonna lose. Scott punctuated his teasing with a breathy laugh. Bending over, he planted his palms against his knees and rocked on his feet. Jude attempted a frown, but the redder his fiancé's face became, the more his own smile grew affectionately. Yeah, tough guy, you win. Don't pass out. Chuckling, Scott stood straight and removed his glasses. He wiped an eye with the side of his wrist and began cleaning the lenses with the bottom of his shirt.
Good call.
Despite the totally stacked odds, it was fun. Wouldn't have wanted it any other way. From the precious way Jude watched his husband-to-be, you got the impression that Jude probably agreed Scott deserved to win today. You glanced away suddenly, deciding not to intrude any further on the couple's private moments. There's a comfort to see the couple in better spirits. Even with all the disagreements over the wedding details, you knew at the end of the day Jude and Scott truly loved each other. Speaking at Baxter, finally, he's been on screen for the past 5 years. At this point, I was trying so hard not to laugh reading all that, while Baxter's just in the corner of my vision. What are you doing over there, dude? You caught the genuinely pleased smile softening his expression. Watching the couple reconnect was his win.
Well,
Since we're already here and it's nearly lunch, how about we grab something to eat? Here? You want to get food at the bowling alley? That went against Scott's whole view of the classy planner. To be fair, it surprised you too, and you knew him better. I don't see why not.
Yeah.
It's cool with me. How bad could it be? Let's do it. Scott's focus flickered between the siblings. His brows raised in contrast to their easygoing remarks.
Yeah.
Sure, we'll eat here. Harry snorted and folded his arms across his chest. He didn't share Scott's qualms at that moment.
Sorry.
I'll bite. So Baxter, I gotta know why you would want to eat at a run-of-the-mill place like this. Immediately, the corners of Scott's mouth curled triumphantly. He soaked in the validation that he wasn't the only one thinking things felt off. Do they secretly have an unquestionably good cook back there? You can tell me. Baxter's nose wrinkled at Terry's interrogation. He combed the tips of his fingers through his swoop of bangs.
you know,
I'm not a nobleman, if you weren't aware. I eat food the same as everyone else, and I'm perfectly happy to explore the convenient meal option directly in front of us. Terry nudged his head in Miranda's direction. He didn't take his eyes off of Baxter, though. He's evading the final question. Maybe the food is really something here. Sure, Baxter, you're a typical, ordinary guy. Shrugging, with the clear amusement in your tone, served to only further disagree with Baxter's claims, and yet he instantly matched your playful grin.
yes.
Exactly, Kit. I'm relieved that someone understands. Oh well, if Kit's gonna vouch for you, then we have no choice but to close the case. Baxter's a boring guy, just like the rest of us. Thank you. Foiled by your own sarcasm. Despite Baxter's continued insistence that he was the type of person who would definitely eat at a bowling alley, the group remained unconvinced. They squished together and watched with intrigue as he approached the counter and actually put in an order. Baxter selected a veggie burger, which evoked several murmurs of approval from your friends. Out of all the options, that appeared to be the most fitting for a fancy wedding planner. He stepped away from the counter, and your friends quickly fell into a line, picking out their own lunches. Jude ordered a chili dog, Scott got a hamburger, Terry picked a slice of cheese pizza, and Miranda asked for the same. Plus a big plate of nachos were ordered for anyone who wanted to split. Before you knew it, it was your turn at the counter. You decided to go with, what do we have? More nachos, chicken strips, french fries, a slice of pizza, hamburger, veggie burger, grilled cheese, tater tots, onion rings, chili cheese fries, hot dog, chili dog, veggies and dip, salad, or nothing. What kind of fucking bowling alley is this that they don't have pretzels? What the fuck? I guess a hot dog. I can do multiple. Oh god, hot dog, french fries. Yeah, let's go. That was it. After all the excitement from the game, you were quite looking forward to lunch. The only thing left to do was wait. And I think that is where we are going to end this episode. I maybe should have ended it a little bit sooner. We're about 10 minutes over the normal time, but I was really hoping that this bowling alley scene would end a little bit sooner. Don't get me wrong, I'm having fun with it, but while I'm playing, I'm trying to look for like good moments to pause, and that good moment just wasn't appearing in this episode, you know? But I'm definitely enjoying myself with this so far. I'm enjoying seeing the differences in Baxter. I'm enjoying seeing the weird plans that he decides to just throw out there, I guess. Bowling, in the way that he kind of hints at the things that happened in step 3 without like outwardly just talking about them. I'm very interested in seeing his character and like a little bit more into why he is doing this, if we're gonna get an explanation. We also might not, I don't know. Yeah, I'm having a good time and I hope that you are as well, but this is where we are going to end this episode for now. So thank you for watching this episode. I hope that you enjoyed. If you are not currently a channel member, just a quick reminder that you can join the channel membership in order to see videos earlier than public releases. It's $5 a month to see videos as I upload them, or $3 to see them 3 days in advance. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video for some more Our Life, Beginnings and Always, Baxter's Route.